Welcome to a new episode of The Career Changers. Our guest today is Tonya Kay Herb, life coach founder of Outspoken. She empowers individuals and organizations to ignite their potential, overcome doubt, and take action to create a life on their own terms. As someone who went from climbing the corporate ladder to embracing a life of self discovery and empowerment, Tonya understands the toll that high expectation can take on a person. Her journey from stress and perfectionism to clarity and peace fuels her mission to guide others through similar transformations. During our chat, we will talk about how to discover the leader within you. Hi, Tonya. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, I'm so glad to be here.
Let's start with your background and your career. So, first of all, what was your dream job when you were a child?
Oh my gosh, that's so easy to answer. I love this question. I wanted to be a race car driver.
Oh, that's very unusual.
I know. I
Where
know.
did that come from?
I'm not exactly sure where it came from. I remember watching some of the drivers on TV with my dad, and we lived out in the middle of nowhere. And so the first evolution of it was on a riding lawnmower. I just thought I was so cool at 11 years old driving the riding lawnmower at high speed. And as I got my driver's license, I practiced on the back streets.
Oh,
Which by the time I was 18, I had my license revoked because I'd had so many speeding tickets.
oh
My
no.
mom was not very happy.
And did you do better at school? What did you study? What is your educational background?
I went to college for 2 years and then I literally dropped out. It wasn't my cup of tea. And I really thought that I was going to be in early education. And as I started going down that path, I recognized that was not where I was going to be serving. It wasn't really me. And I thought it would be because both of my parents were in education. And so I thought it was just going to be a natural progression. And it took me a while and a few different career choices to find really what mattered to me. And so that it's been an evolution.
Mm. And how did you start your professional life? Or better, what was your first job?
My very first real big girl job. Is that the question?
Yes, yes.
I worked at a balloon shop.
Oh,
I was still in high school and we put these balloon bouquets together and would take them to people for birthdays or anniversaries or what have you. And it was back in the 80s and in the 19, those who don't really know. But yeah, that was my very first big girl job. That was so much fun. I loved being creative and designing. It was fun.
it
It was a
sounds
lot of
very
fun.
fun.
Hmm.
And how did you progress your professional life? So I guess you had a career from there on before you became a coach.
What? I have had several things. I had a cleaning business for a while. I worked for the post office for a while, delivering mail. And what I found with those two professions is that toilets and mailboxes don't talk back. So I needed something where I was really interacting more with people. But at the time, those served me really well because my children were very young and I needed a flexibility in my schedule. And so I did that for a while. I did some corporate work. I did real estate for about 10 years and loved that. And then I went into financial services where I worked for a group of financial advisors. And you know what I found in all of those different jobs and elements of my life, always found myself in a position leading the way, leading others, showing up and doing the thing, stepping up, raising my hand, and just being really good at being a problem solver. And that's really how I ended up in coaching, really.
And so nowadays, you help other people with their development, whether that's personal or related to their career, and also to explore their leadership potential. So, how
Mm-hmm.
did you first realize you had leadership potential? You mentioned that in this job or career you had, you felt that you were the one leading. But was there a specific moment in your life where you felt like, yes, I'm a leader?
I don't know if there was a specific moment. And that's a great question because when I'm coaching others, and most of them are leading teams or even just their family, and when you ask people if they consider themselves to be a leader, most people don't really say yes. Nobody really steps up to the table. They consider themselves in so many other roles or titles, but not many say, yes, I'm a leader. The way I think about leadership may be a little different than the traditional description or definition, because what I really believe leadership is, and I'll go back to the original question in a moment, is what I believe it is it's really how you show up every day. It's not about a title or a role that you play or your position or your tenure at a company. It's really how you show up every single day. It's about you saying, I'm going to lead myself first, and then I can show the way or share my expertise or just embrace that position of empowering others. And so how do you think about leadership? When you ask people about leadership, what have you heard? What do you believe?
Yeah, that's really important. I like leading myself first. And I think that's connected with understanding ourselves. We need to know
Mhm.
ourselves before we can lead ourselves. So, how important is self-awareness in uncovering our leadership potential, in your opinion?
It's probably one of the most important elements is self-awareness, recognizing your innate traits, how you shine, and even your weaknesses, even identifying those places that you're not at the level you expected to be, right? Or they're not your strength. Understanding that y- you don't have to be good at everything is really important. And I think when we learn more about ourselves, we step back, we take time to really ask ourselves what's important to us, what we really enjoy doing, whether it's professionally or personally. When we start to really recognize and hone those things, then we can lead ourselves in a better way. Nobody's coming to tell us to put our gym shoes on, to get to the gym, to get out and take a walk, to put the bag chip down, to stop snacking, to eat healthy. That's our job to do for ourselves. And so when we start doing those things for ourselves and honoring that, we can show up better, which makes us more engaging with other people. It makes us more engaging with our teams at work, in our friendships, in our relationships. It changes everything when we slow down for a moment, start to recognize what's important to us.
Really like the example of starting from the small things of practical life. We can actually be the leader of ourselves, even with the smallest things in our
Yes,
day-to-day life. They sometimes are the most difficult one because that's discipline.
I know. You're right. It is completely about discipline. And we're not talking about gold medal discipline, what it takes to be a gold medalist or an Olympian. We're talking about just those everyday things that we can do, those small steps eh, that stack up to healthy habits. And that's how we get started. So when we go back to the original question about leadership, the most important thing is awareness and recognition, or recognizing where we're at. I couldn't agree more with that.
Hmm. And leadership can come in different forms.
Yes.
I guess we are in a new era where leadership has a possibility to be expressed maybe in softer ways. But how do our values influence our leadership style and decisions?
One of the first exercises I go through with my clients is to actually sit down and identify what their values are. You can lead people without knowing what they are, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of direction in that. When you stop for a moment and understand who you are, what makes you tick, what makes you operate or helps you operate, I think that changes the way we lead. I think we lead with a little more confidence. We're not talking about arrogance or you having all the answers, but also while you're curious about what makes you tick, if you can apply that to the people that you're surrounded by, whether you're in the leadership position or not, it creates a different team dynamic, even within your families.
And what's the role of emotional intelligence in creating an effective leadership?
Emotional intelligence. I think that gets confused sometimes with maturity. And I don't know if you've found this. Have you found this as you're traveling through your journey of life? What the difference between emotional intelligence and maturity are completely different. Emotional intelligence is understanding and knowing, this is just my opinion, that you do have triggers in your life, things that will come up, and there it will bring emotion to a lot of situations. And it's about being able to recognize those emotions in the moment and manage your way through it. You're managing yourself because you may be triggered by something that someone says, and their intent could have never been to the way you took it, right? You may have taken it in a way that was never intended. And I think being really curious helps us actually grow our emotional intelligence and ask better questions. What have
Mm.
you found?
I never thought about the difference between emotional intelligence and maturity. I think maturity probably comes from experience, while emotional intelligence is something that I believe someone can have naturally more than other people. But we all know
Mm-hmm.
that it can be developed. So I think that's the important thing. And the question comes because nowadays we talk about leadership as something that needs to include emotional intelligence and the ability to understand others.
Agreed. Agreed. I've heard this a lot from a younger generation that talks about, especially in their early 20s. They thought that they would be adorned with emotional intelligence as they were doing those adulting things. And that's not the case. I think we've all learned that, where we're like, wow, I'm doing it. I'm paying the bills and I'm adulting and I'm doing the mom thing and all these things.
Hmm.
It just because you're doing those things, adulting doesn't mean that you have a sense of maturity, wisdom, or emotional intelligence. Those are all separate pieces of our lives. And I think it's important to really start having those conversations
Yeah, definitely. But I
to
guess it's
grow.
part of becoming an adult or thinking when you're very young that now you are an adult and you know everything, even if it's not true.
I remember those days.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and I couldn't wait until my 40th birthday. I was so excited to hit 40, which sounds crazy, right? But in my mind, and this, I'm really going to throw myself under the bus here, but in my mind, I thought, oh, when I get to 40, I'm going to have it together. I'm going to have a little bit more sophistication or class. I'm really going to have my stuff together, if you will. And I get to my 40th birthday and I'm like, wait, where is it? Where's my grace and sophistication? Why didn't it show up? And it really was a shocker. It threw me for a loop for a minute. And I know that may sound crazy to some, but it was really an aha moment for me because when I hit 40, my oldest was graduating from high school. I started very young as a mom. And so I thought, oh, I've already raised kids. I'm about to empty nest and all of these things. And I did not have my stuff together. It took some work, So
Yeah,
it took some self-development.
definitely. And we all have sometimes self-doubt or imposter syndrome. What is the impact of that when we are trying to discover how to be better leaders?
I think everyone can be a leader. I think everyone is a leader, just what we talked about before, where it's really about leading yourself first. And so, first owning that no one's coming to save you. And yes, in the professional world, there are titles and positions that are leadership.
Mm,
But when we all show up as the best version of ourselves, it makes a difference. So, imposter syndrome is something we all battle from a time to time. And sometimes, even within the same week or day, you can step into a different situation, even with all that you've accomplished, and still feel a bit of imposter syndrome. And what that is, it just in my mind, just my perception of it is that we expected when we took on this role, this title, this position, stepped into this space, we expected to have a different outcome or to feel differently ourselves. And we start to doubt, do I have what it takes? Am I enough? All of those things. That's where that starts to creep in. And in order to let go of that, you have to first recognize that there's not a person on this planet that hasn't felt imposter syndrome. And
mm,
it's really about a little bit of that fear or self doubt, and just knowing that you're going to just continue to take the steps to move forward.
mm. What strategies have you found effective in building leadership confidence?
Embracing a good enough mindset, right? Learning how to prioritize, m- making quicker decisions. And you can do that in several different ways. Stop by not overthinking everything. And I think one of the one of the other things is cultivating a growth mindset, surrounding yourself with people that have been there before, that can mentor you, ask for help, and understanding that you don't have to have all the answers. That's what your team is for, is that collaboration. And when you let go of some of those things, you really can show up as a better leader.
Mm. And when there are some challenges in our life, like criticism or failure, how can still maintain that self-confidence that can allow us to believe in ourselves that we are good leaders?
Not letting those things define you, understanding that every failure is a lesson. And if you can take a lesson from everything and go, oh, that didn't work, let's try something new. It's really about the perception and the attitude that you put into it, because those things can take you down a rabbit hole. They certainly can, but you get to decide if it defines you or if you're going to learn from it and move forward.
Mm. And I guess one of the challenges with leadership comes from perfectionism or overthinking. What techniques can we use to combat overthinking and stay decisive? Something that I know very well. I'm an
Oh my
overthinker.
gosh. What is, we're going to go back to the first space that we were talking about, is adopting that good enough mindset. It's learning how to prioritize the things that are important, setting realistic benchmarks, right? By not those great big expectations. It's great to have big dreams, but you also have to have some realistic benchmarks to get to, and celebrating yourself along the way. And I think one of the biggest things is perfectionism and overthinking is making, like we said before, making quicker decisions. So one of the tips I would give everyone is, if you can make a decision within 2 minutes, like just set the timer and put pros and cons on the sheet, and as soon as you're done, make the decision and move on. Some bigger decisions take a little bit more than that, but if it's going to take less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. Just
Mm.
go right down the list.
I like that. I'm gonna try it. Oh, so
Good
difficult.
luck.
So we're reaching the end of this episode, but we have a few more questions. So first of all, what is one piece of advice you wish you had received earlier in your leadership journey?
To let go of perfectionism, that I am the one that's holding myself back. I'm in my own way. And I gave a lot of excuses to that for a long time. When this happens, or if I could just do it this way, if I would have had someone that could show me how perfectionism and overthinking everything was holding me back, I really could have done a lot of things differently. But now I realize it, recognize it, and I can see when I'm going down that rabbit hole. So I can talk to it all the time because I'm a recovering perfectionist myself.
What advice would you give to someone who would like to discover their leadership potential?
I would suggest finding a coach or a mentor who can help you define your core values, understand what your strengths are so that you can articulate that and actually get really good feedback. Someone that can be honest with you, that isn't afraid of saying something directly to you. You're not taking it personal. You're really going to grow from that. And I think having someone in your corner that can hold that kind of space for you, that moves mountains so much quicker than trying to do it all on your own.
Hmm. And now, really, the last question. If you could give yourself a piece of advice, what would you say to your younger self?
To get out of my own way, stop overthinking. The perfectionism is what's holding you back. You are good enough. You're more than good enough. And you don't need outside validation to show up as the best version of yourself. And a lot of times I looked for that for a long time until I understood that I was my own worst critic.
Thank you, Tonya, so much for joining us today and sharing your inspirational career story with us, and also this insight about finding our leadership.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
And a last message for our listeners, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and tune in next week for a new inspirational episode of the Career Changers. Thank you.